Hello, BookTube. I've got a little mail haul for you, and I've got some books I want to discuss that aren't part of the mail haul, but it's my channel, and it's all about books, right? We want to talk about books. So let's start with the mail first. We'll start with this one here. Not many packages, enough to keep us busy, but I'm sure we'll find stuff to talk about. What is this here? Oh, fantastic. Okay. I requested this. I very much am looking forward to it. This was out in the autumn, I believe, from National Geographic. Yes, November. This comes out in November. It's by Kara Cooney, and it's called When Women Ruled the World. It's the sequence of biographies of 6 Egyptian queens, from the woman who wrote The Woman Who Would Be King, which was well received. And as so, let me see here. Is this going to be the same here? Well, that is the famous mask of the bust of Nefertiti, which is in the museum in Berlin. Some of you, if you remember, goes way back on BookTube. You might remember once upon a time there was a booktuber named Steve Partridge. He lived in Berlin, and I challenged him in a video to go into the museum and take a photo of the bust, even though I think that's forbidden by just ordinary museum goers. And I think that's the last anyone heard of him. It's possible that the East German state police shot him to death. Oh, no way. Sorry, my producer's telling me that Germany has united. There's no more East Germany. So I guess we don't really know what happened to Steve Partridge. We certainly never got our picture, but that's kind of sort of what it looks like. It's a remarkable thing that it survives from antiquity. So, whoops. So this is the cover. And what have we got here? Once upon a time, there were women who ruled the world. Thousands of years ago, and against all odds of a male-dominated system in which they lived, women ruled repeatedly with formal, unadulterated power. What was this magical land of female rulers? Ancient Egypt. And this is the story of 6 remarkable female pharaohs. Menef, Neferusobek, Hatshepsut, Nefertiti, Taurosret. Fortunately, I don't think there are any ancient Egyptians among you. And, of course, Cleopatra, who climbed the highest and wielded the most significant power despite their gender. Ancient Egypt is an anomaly as the only land that consistently demanded the rule of women to keep its regime in working order, safe from discord, and on the surest possible footing, particularly when a crisis was underway, explains our author. This does not mean that ancient Egypt was any less oppressive or cruel to women than other complex societies on Earth, but they did use female power to avoid aggression and war and to maintain order. So this is the story of those 6 women, 3 of whom are well known and 3 of whom are not. I can't wait. I think it's going to be fascinating. I mean, I understand that books like this are sold on a bit on hyperbole. so those of you who maybe aren't familiar with ancient history or ancient Greece or ancient Egypt might want to take that the world bit with a grain of salt. At the same time that these women were ruling Egypt, which is, the size of Delaware, there were probably an equal number of women ruling the Empire of China. and if you had translated the title of this book on that pub sheet to those women, they would have had 2 questions. First would have been, what's Egypt? And the second would have been, is this not the world? So, but you get the point. It was utterly remarkable. Could not possibly have happened formally, I mean openly, where the citizens knew. It could not possibly have happened in most of the ancient societies that we know of, where women very much wielded power. In Periclean Athens, in Republic Rome, in Imperial Rome, very much wielded power, but they could never do it openly. And in Egypt, yes, I think in part because the rulers were also gods, and that helps a lot. But I could be wrong about that. I can't wait to find out. Let's move on here. I've got some bookish stuff to talk about once we're done with the mail. Okay, great. Fantastic. All right, this is a finished copy. Comes out any day now. I think this is due in June. Oh, no. Okay, early July. This is A Carnival of Losses. This is Donald Hall's book about nearing 90, which is just astonishing if you know anything about the way this man has lived his life. But it's certainly the occasion for a book. So let's see here. This thing is wafer thin. So, but it's big, too. So I don't think it could be a slim volume of poetry. Okay. All right. Very good. How amazing. This is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. I'm not going to show it to you. I'm going to wait for the end. This is amazingly, this is one of the things, books that aren't part of the mail. I had no idea I was going to get another copy. But it's one of the things I want to talk about at the end. So we'll wait until then. It's only a minute away. We only have a couple more packages to do. So let's see here. What is this next one? Satisfyingly heavy. Great. Great. I was beginning to worry that I wouldn't get this. This is actually old. I don't know that I can justify reviewing it, although I sure as heck would love to, because boy was it good. This is Paul McLean's Love and Ruin in the finished copy. I had the advanced copy, but I wasn't sure I was going to get the finished copy. Those of you who maybe don't remember when we got the advanced copy, this is so good. It is so good. I know that as a reviewer in 2018, I'm not supposed to say that because it's just a rock solid, totally involving, entertaining, and moving meat and potatoes novel. And so I'm not supposed to say that it's very good. I'm supposed to say, I guess, that it's some sort of privileged, non-woke, patriarchal mistake that it happened to back into being entertaining. It doesn't shatter the paradigm. The main characters don't have the same name as the author. It's just really, really good. And it feels like a betrayal to my reviewing brethren. Oh god, it's covered in blurbs. Here, let me show you. That's the very, very lovely understated cover. In Love and Ruin, the author of The Paris Wife, returns to the timeless subject of Ernest Hemingway, this time through the prism of his stormy relationship with the incomparable Martha Gellhorn, a force of nature who carved her own way in a man's world. In Maclean's words, quote, Gellhorn was incandescent, a true original, with brass and vivacity and courage to spare. I was instantly under her spell, close quote. And if you read any of her writings, that will happen to you too. The more you read about her, and the more you read of her, and the more you read books by her, the more you realize that in the Gellhorn-Hemingway pair, the famous Gellhorn-Hemingway pair, we are venerating the wrong one. But let's move on. Over the course of her singular life, Gellhorn would report on virtually every major conflict of the 20th century. But in 1936, 28 and untested and more than a little lost, she met her literary hero in a Key West bar and then followed him to war in Spain. And the book is the story of it's a historical novel about her relationship with Hemingway. And this is the point in a description like that, where I would automatically, you're probably dead tired of me saying it, I would automatically say, and although, a made-up story is fine, if you really want to be interested in the subject, read a good biography of her, or even a good biography of Hemingway. There are good biographies of both of them, but no, I only say that when the made-up stories are asleep at the wheel, when they fall down on the job. This book does not. It does exactly what you want a historical novel about well-documented, relatively contemporary events to do, which is get inside them. Take liberties, bring them alive, do things that a collection of Martha Gellhorn letters can't do. And this book does that. Oh my, right from the beginning. Right from the beginning when we get the part of the book that should be tedious, Gellhorn's young girlhood and her relationship with her family, before Hemingway even blunders onto the scene. And then right through there, the latter parts of this book are such a wonderfully knowing portrait of, how to put it, of what happens when first a killing frost and then winter descends onto a vibrant love. What happens to it? It doesn't immediately die. It certainly doesn't vanish. What happens to it when it's first cut to the quick by a killing frost and then buried in snow? This will be at every library in America, certainly. So if you're on the edge about this, or if maybe you read The Paris Wife and you're wondering if lightning can strike twice, I'm telling you that it can. Oh my, can it ever. Highly recommended. How wonderful to have a finished copy. And then this is the last one, and then we'll move on to the public service announcement of our special. This feels like another finished copy. So, oh, okay. All right. Oh boy, I'm letting the reviewing fraternity down here. Oh, that's all right though. I'm a reviewing fraternity of one. I might not be towing the party line in the New York Review of Books party line, but I'd match my critical abilities against any of them. So, bring it on. If you think that I'm some sort of brainless doofus, then you translate Greek. This is a question of trust by Penny Vincenzi. I hate to say it. I never thought I would. The name, the word, the phrase sounds so alien, but the late Penny Vincenzi. And this will, I don't know, there might be another book after this, but this is the last book that she will see through the presses. And I read the finished copy. This is my second finished copy. I read the finished copy just a little while ago, and boy, oh boy, is it good. It's her usual thing. Very high society, very glitzy, very sudsy. But she brings so much more to it than that. Here, first of all, unlike a lot of books of that nature, like, for instance, the big fat novels of Jackie Collins come to mind, Penny Vincenzi's a really good plotter. Her books are exhaustively worked out before she starts in with the face slapping and the bed hopping. It's just, I'm sad to say, but it's vintage her. I will miss this author. These are reliable. She writes bed hopping farce, high octane romance for thinking people, and that's not easy to do. You have to have just the slightest touch of tongue-in-cheek, just the slightest touch of knowing irony, any more than a slight touch, and your readers will think you're making fun of them, and she most certainly was not. But if you don't have any of it, you will get bored with what you're doing. You as a writer will get bored with what you're doing. So there has to be just the slightest touch, and she mastered it perfectly. Only other contemporary writer I know of who could consistently do that from book to book was Jilly Cooper, who never really caught on in this country. So, Penny Vincenzi's kind of our Jilly Cooper. But anyway, all right, so that brings us to the end of the books. Now, I want to, let me see here. Am I making a mess? I am. Okay. I want to show you 3 books that I was going to say 3 books that didn't come in this mail haul, but actually one of them did. So, and for different reasons. And best to move straight from Love and Ruin and Penny Vincenzi to this next one, because this is another book that I really want to recommend. I don't think I got any of it. I don't think I got an advance copy on camera. But I just read the finished copy just a bit ago, and I've been chatting back and forth with it on social media and on email with other people. Publicists and who say, boy, I wish that were one of my books, or authors who are New York Times bestsellers themselves and look at it and say, boy, oh boy, do I wish I had written that, and all just loving it. And it's The Summer Wives by Beatrice Williams. It's the new Beatrice Williams. And it is also very thoughtful, high drama. I don't really know how to describe it. It's a Foursquare historical novel set partially in it's set mostly in the middle of the 20th century on an island, a snooty island off the coast of New England that is a vacation home for wealthy people, and it's wonderful. There's the short and the long, regardless of trying to categorize it. It's wonderful. I can't recommend it high enough. It will be in your libraries. It's a young girl whose mother brings her to this island in order to, join with the wealthy people there, and she learns their ways. She's taken in by a very knowing, very worldly girl around her own age, and she quickly realizes that the island has 2 faces. On the one hand are the really glitzy, shallow, Bertie Wooster, vicious type wealthy people that she moves among now all the time, but underneath that are the Portuguese housemaids and fishermen who run the island, who keep it a living, breathing concern, and who are there year round, sometimes living very, very hard lives. And she falls in love, kinda, sorta, with a young man who is part of that underside of the island. And then in classic Brideshead Revisited fashion, time passes, and she goes back to the island realizing that he has been jailed for murder and has escaped. He's a man on the run. And she wants to come to terms with what they had between them, but she also wants to come to terms with what the island actually meant to her. By the last 100 pages, you start to realize that the title of the book, Summer Wives, is actually perfectly chosen. There are all sorts of things that only come together in the last 100 pages. This is a perfect example of a contemporary novel. Even though it's not snooty, it will never get reviewed in places that there will get reviewed. But it's a perfect example of something done right that I often complain of on this channel is done wrong, which is when contemporary novelists have no idea how to end a book, where they go and they go and they go, and then, you know, in their Soho loft, they start to run low on cut grade cat food cocaine and decide that's it. So they get up from their word processor and just email what the lump of wet wash to their agent. The agent will deal with it. And there is no ending. There are no conclusions. There is no sense that the person who's writing the book knew how it would end when they started it, which when you don't know that when you start a book, but when you get to the end, you know perfectly well whether or not that's true. And I don't want to read a manuscript by someone who was just making it up as they went along. That's not what we have novelists for. One way or another. I didn't mean that to turn into a rant. This book ends wonderfully. It ends in 3 different ways, on 3 different tiers, and is beautifully done. It's not, in my opinion, quite as beautifully written as Love and Ruin, as the Paul McKay, but well worth your time is my point. That was book part number 1. Book part number 2. Where did it go? Here we go. Book part number 2 is a lifeline call to an at-risk group here on BookTube. A group I often worry about, even though I like to keep my distance from them because they're a little grody. Their intentions are in the right place. This little subgroup, but they're sort of wandering. They're like lost boys. They don't really have the guidance that they need in order to lead them out of the brackets that they have entered into. And of course, I'm referring to the dude bro readers. The people who think that Cormac McCarthy is a literary genius. The people who worship the clipped sentences that Raymond Carver's agent and editor made out of his manuscripts while he was flat on his face, burbling drunk in the parking lot. They start, these dude bro writers, with people like Chuck Blaniak or even Ernest Hemingway. And then they move on to the contemporary avatars of those writers, but they're not expanding. They might be moving on to new avatars, but they only want one thing, these poor dude bro boys, and it's never girls, it's always boys. These poor dude bro boys only want one thing. They want a novel to hit their dopamine centers, just the way a video game does. They want the exact same feeling as that. That is the only conceivable reason to read An Infinite Jest, to read House of Leaves by Dan Lusky. It's the only conceivable reason to read this stuff, or Karl Ove Knausgaard. The only conceivable reason to dote and worship on this stuff, on garbage, is because it's garbage that's been crafted to hit your dopamine centers, so that you're not doing the boring work of reading. So you can have these poor wandering dude bros, these poor misguided creatures, who you walk into their room and they've got an entire bookcase full of books, and your first impression is, well, this is a real reader. And then after you look at all the books and realize they're all exactly the same book, they're all drug books. They're essentially drug books. They're meant to hit a center of your brain that's over here, when the center of your brain for reading is over here. And you look at those books, you realize, well, okay, there are 30, 40, 50, 60 books here, and they're all well thumbed, and this person obviously knows them very well. But this person is drugging himself to the point where he is incapable of reading an Edith Wharton novel. Not just unwilling to read it, but incapable of reading it. Where the long-form attention and the scrutiny of subtlety and the awareness of nuance is eroding to the point where they're not able to do it. They'll mask it by saying they're not willing to do it. But in reality, dude bros are on a perilous path. As all drug addictions are perilous. They're on a perilous path that will lead them to a point where, even though they are lifetime readers, they are permanently debarred from Anna Karenina, from Jane Austen, from Marilyn Robinson, and that's a shame. So, whenever I can, I like to throw out a lifeline to the Dude Bros to get them back, because much like with Cro-Magnon Men and Homo Sapiens, Dude Bro books and real books have a common ancestor. They have a whole bunch of them. I've mentioned a couple on this channel already. I mentioned The Killer Angels by Michael Shara, a perfect common ancestor of real literature and Dude Bro literature. You can read that and gradually grope your way back to the real world. For instance, the path that splits off from The Killer Angels to nuanced adult reading, to this kind of reading, would make it possible for you to read Bruce Catton or Shelby Foote. Whereas the path that branches off from The Killer Angels towards Fight Club will make it impossible for you to read those books, and that's a shame. And just today I became aware of an absolutely gorgeous reprint, 50th anniversary, 50 years since this thing appeared, of another real lit, Dude Bro lit common ancestor, a book that I can actually use, once again, now that it's in print and everywhere, as another lifeline to the Dude Bros. And that's this. That's Charles Portis's True Grit, 50th anniversary edition, put out in a beautiful paperback by Overlook with deckled edges and French flaps and a whole bunch of introductions. Who is here? Ray Blunt does an introduction, and afterwards by Donna Tartt, and there are essays in here by Jay Jennings and the best-selling novelist Jacqueline Chard, with blurbs all over the back, including one by the late Anthony Bourdain. This is the story of an 18-year-old girl in the Old West whose father is gunned down by a treacherous hand of his, who then disappears into the Indian territories and hooks up with the notorious Lucky Ned Pepper and his gang. And this girl, this 18-year-old girl, Maddie, is not normal. Her detractors say she's full of sass, but really what she is just sure of herself. She knows perfectly well what she wants and doesn't want, and as she says over and over again in the book, I will not be bullied. And she decides that the law, where her father was shot, is not taking his death seriously enough. She wants the man who shot him tracked down and brought to justice. And if the law won't do it, then she will. So she hires the meanest marshal that the town has, a gigantic man named Rooster Cogburn, who takes her money, and they eventually ride out to find Lucky Ned Pepper's gang and the man who shot her father. It is a fantastic novel. Just fantastic. It is, along with Lonesome Dove, along with the short stories of Elmore Leonard, along with the short stories of John Cheever, it is a lifeline for our wandering Dude Bro brethren back to the light. Back to the light. Back to the light. And now it's available everywhere. So I want to recommend it to everybody, of course, all of you, no matter what, including no matter whether you've seen either of the two excellent movie adaptations. It's had two. They were both fantastic, both well worthy of all the praise they got. But the book is better. I don't often say that, but in this case, it is. So, and also, the book is a perfect complement to either movie. So it's not like you're going to be reading it and saying, I know what happens next. No. So, that's another of the three books that I wanted to mention, is True Grit, which is out in a beautiful new edition. What is this? This is $17, and it's a book you will love and read over and over again. So in this case, and it's also beautiful. So in this case, it's well worth it. And then the last thing the thing I got in the mail, didn't expect to get it, but that's great. This is not the book. This is sort of a mock-up. The book is going to be expensive to produce, so I understand why the publisher's not just ladling them out. They probably won't have a review copy until they have finished copies, so it's all artwork. But this one isn't a recommendation because I haven't read it yet. It instead is an exhortation. I want one of you to review this for me. I will do it myself, but I want one of you to do it. This comes out in... do I have a date here? Going to help me out here? Do we have a date? Okay, it comes out in late October. Halloween. So we have plenty of time for you to get whatever copy I get. I won't send you this because this isn't the whole book. To get whatever copy I get when I get it, pour through it, take notes, write a bumbling, ham-handed, heavily Novocaine first draft review, and send it to me so that I can help you. and it's this. It's Dungeons & Dragons, Art and Arcana. And it is a gigantic feverishly illustrated book, all about Dungeons and Dragons, all about the evolution of the characters through the different monster manuals and character manuals. So the first edition of the monster manual, which I think is collectible now, isn't the first edition of the monster manual or the character manual collectible? All the way through, you'd get these same characters, but the art style would evolve, the description would evolve, and you get that all throughout this book. You're going to. This is just a little mock-up. The real thing will be far more impressive than this. And I know... Oh, look at that. How awesome is that? I know for sure, by the faint aroma of Doritos and linseed oil, that I have Dungeons & Dragons fans watching. I know for a fact that I do. One of you should review this book for me. when I finally get it, one of you should do it. You'll know more about it than I will. You'll have more of affection for the whole fan world than I possibly could, even though I don't dislike the game. But I was never actually... The one time that friends of mine tried to introduce me to it was disastrous, in the same way that board games are always disastrous for me, and those of you who've been watching this channel for any length of time will be able to guess right away the reason. What do you do when you play Dungeons & Dragons? What's one of the main things you do, aside from gorge on snack food and pop drinks? You roll dice. Yes? Yeah. You know what a rolled dice is? It's a small treat-sized object in motion. So we tried it once, and the carefully arranged board and all the pieces was blown to smithereens by 3 beagles who saw me roll dice onto a board and launched themselves into the air, assuming, because they're adorable, that it was playtime. And everybody went nuts and cursed and was aggravated and picked up all the pieces and reassembled the board, and I was corralling my boys. I was laughing my head off, so they knew they weren't in any trouble. I was telling them, don't do that. Don't do that. And at the time, this was ages ago, the game must have just started, my friend said, we don't really trust that. Well, how about you just let them sit over there? So I did, and I was mildly interested. I wasn't really playing. I was sort of watching. And then the next time, I think a week later, we tried it again, and the same thing happened, only it was worse, because the second time it was my beagles and the house dog that all went nuts. Not when anybody else threw the dice, but when I did, it was, oh, well, okay, when the humans are doing it, it's something mysterious. When he's doing it, it involves us. So they just bombarded onto the board. I think one of my beagles actually landed on the board. It's just, after that, I was allowed to watch, but I was not allowed to even attempt to play. So I'm not in a position to review this book. But this is a lot of work, and it's a beautiful product. I want it reviewed. I want one of you to let me know. Let me know in the comments field if you love Dungeons & Dragons and have any kind of aspirations to write prose. And that's it. There we go. So there was an odd ending, because I wanted to recommend a couple of books. I want to recommend The Summer Wives, which is tremendously good. I want to recommend, of course, True Grit, not just for Dude Bros. It's not just for Dude Bros anymore. If you haven't read it, you should read it, because boy, oh boy, is it good. An American classic. And then we've got When Women Ruled the World, about ancient Egypt. Carnival of Losses, Donald Hall at 90. Love and Ruin by Paula McLean. And A Question of Trust by Penny Vincenzi. So a nice, big, active mail haul with lots and lots of stuff to talk about in the comments field. It's just the way I like it. So I'll wrap this up, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.